Okay, so let's get back into introductions. I am sorry about that little technical glitch we had with our software platform here, but we're back. So maybe we could go around and do one more introduction now that we've got the kinks worked out. Sorry about that to our panelists, and let's just go back around. Mike Hussey from the great state of Utah. I know Dennis gave a shout out to Irvin's OH, so go Utes. Irvin.
Hi there, can you guys hear me okay? Hopefully you guys can. Again, Irvin Rogers from the great state of Ohio. I've crossed my 18-month average, so I'm feeling pretty good about that chart that Doug showed, all the new CIOs. So I'm reaching that middle point, which is fantastic. I still got a lot of years in me. I'm excited. I'm happy to be here, and he's right. You know, I said OH, so OHIO. Happy to be here, and looking forward to a great conversation.
Thanks, Irvin.
Great, thank you. I'm Rob Atkinson. I'm from the great state of Maryland, although I don't work for the Maryland government. I just happen to live here. I run a think tank called the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, ITIF.org. And I and it have been focused on e-government issues for a long, long time. I helped push and pass the eGov Act of 2002 for the federal government. And so really delighted and honored to be here to talk about these critical issues.
Thanks, Rob.
Right. And I'm Calvin Rhodes, CIO from the state of Georgia, and really glad to be here. And it's, you know, Nacio does just a fantastic job of teeing up topics that are relevant, trying to help us do a better job. So it's always been great to be a part of this organization. And so, Mike, I'll toss it back to you.
All right, thank you. As you can see, we're a little more relaxed towards in the last session here. I noticed that last session there were a lot more ties, but we're a little more relaxed towards the end of the day. And but you can see we're in the home stretch of. It's been so far just a great conference. Even though we've been doing this virtually, it's been just very thought-provoking. It's been very informative. And we hope this session is as well. We've got some great panelists. Irvin, who's just passing the midpoint, Calvin, that's maybe at the other end, and I'm not sure where I am, somewhere in between you two. So having a ton of fun too, Irvin. It's just been great in these jobs. And actually, I just have to, somebody wants to say something off to the side, and I'm going to just show you who's looking over my shoulder. Oh! So he's practicing social distancing, but you know, we were missing the separation, so you can see once in a while he'll want to chime in. As you can see right now, he's like, hey. And so anyway, we're having a lot of fun as our Nacio family, as Irvin was describing, just a great opportunity to come together, and just love the fun and the camaraderie and the information that come out of these conferences. So our session, of course, is talking about the path forward. What does life and work look like after the COVID-19? And so we've got a great opportunity to discuss probably one of the most important topics. It's probably the most timely topic that we could be considering as state CIOs at the moment. And Rob, it'd be interesting to hear your insights being your think tank out there in Maryland. So let's just jump right into the first question that I think might be one that we're all dealing with, and probably those listeners out there wondering the same thing. And that is, what is returning to work look like? There's going to be a lot of logistics. I mean, I go to Costco, they're now requiring masks. I go to the cash register, they have plexiglass kind of dividers. They're limiting how many people come into the store. And so what does that look like as we're starting to make that transition out of the old, you know, where we have been pretty much working remote and distancing? And what does it look like now as we come back? Does our workspace change? Do we disinfect every night? What does that look like? And so maybe just kick it off to you first, Irvin. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, you know, I think there are going to be a host of different things that we're going to need to do, such as, you know, I think we're all going to need to adapt.
Yep.
Exhibit A, or, you know, if you're feeling a little bit more, you know, with you, and I started that out there, you could use this. But my favorite helmet, or, you know, this is the ultimate 95. I call it, instead of the N95. This is my, Black Panther, full on, nerd helmet, as Katrina will make fun of me later for doing that. But I think for the most part, in all seriousness, we are going to have to take a look at building codes, the cleanliness of equipment. But there's something first I wanted to do. I wanted to thank a number of states that participated in a call that I hosted maybe about 2 weeks ago. It was over 15 different states. I think I walked away with more information than I came with. Everything from thermal heat sensors to try and figure out temperatures. Obviously traditional wave the thermometer. I think you're gonna have to be more intentional, more drive-bys. I think folks are gonna have to we think about a big challenge in our hands for those large buildings with regards to the elevators. That was a major concern across the 15 different states that joined. Workstation wise, I mean, I just upgraded our floor to go to a more agile environment. We were supposed to move back in just before all this broke loose, and now we're probably have to start thinking about plexiglass, et cetera, not only from a cleaning perspective, right? All the equipment that we sent out to our employees, and that equipment coming back, whether that be desktops, laptops, monitors. So I think there's going to be a lot of things that are going to become new norms. But and we've heard this theme in other panels, but I think we've proven without a shadow of a doubt that from a state perspective, coming from private, and many of us have, there's this perception that from a state standpoint that work can't get done from a remote standpoint. And I think that is going to start to lift as we continue to move forward. So those are my initial thoughts on this conversation. Really excited about I'm calling it the big return. So.
Good. Maybe, hey, Calvin, could we go to you first or next, and then maybe have Rob some final thoughts?
Sure. Well, I think I would start out by saying that we probably never returned to whatever the normal was before this all started. And I think most people would agree with that. We've not only have shown that state staff can do a great job working remotely. And so I think that will certainly be a part of whatever we shape together for a model in the future. But I do think some of the initial items that we're going to have to deal with are, many of the things that Irvin has talked about, from how to, you just get your staff out through elevators, some very tactical type items. But, I think also there's the element of we're bringing individuals back as someone may show signs of that they're becoming ill. And I mean, things that we've never really had to deal with on any scale before. And so I think that will take a tremendous amount of planning in how we address those, not only as statewide, but also as individual agencies. And, the type of issues related to when someone gives us information, how do we answer questions of staff without violating some of the privacy concerns of our individuals who are dealing with a particular issue. And I think, training our managers and supervisors on, if we're going to have a remote workforce, how do we do a better job of managing those individuals? So I think we have a lot of items that will appear on our plates that we will have to try to lead our teams to do a better job of trying to tackle some of those type issues. You mentioned it earlier with the mask and all that is now a part of our lives. Well, just questions around PPE. Can we find it? Do we provide it to our staffs? What's the expectation? And then as we're coming up with these rules, I think one of the things that our team has been talking about, there's no clear-cut answer on how you do something, because we've got different categories of people that will be working for us. Those in some of the higher risk categories that we will need to treat and provides probably some different options to, versus others of us that might not have as many health concerns, that work with our coworkers and trying to find some things that work for all of us, and also making sure that we're the policies are in place. Issues that I'm sure that our legal teams will be focused on. How do we make sure we do that without discriminating against someone who's been sick and not? Just a lot of those type of issues. You mentioned at what point do we cross into some privacy concerns with some of the technology of monitoring someone's temperature. I know that we had recently piloted a program that can actually scan a group of multiple people, notify individuals that within, I think it's 0.7 of a degree, 0.07 of a degree of what their temperature is. It uses AI to take into account the outside temperature and how that might affect someone, but you're storing their image, you're storing information about them, and then notifying people based on what it discovers. So I mean, all the policies behind that one tool will take, I hate to say some time, but it will at least take some discussions on where is the correct line, and then as things happen, being able to quickly move and make some modifications to what we thought might be a good approach. So that's some of the initial things. I guess I'll end the thought with, I was talking with a person a few weeks ago, and he said, as other generations have looked to World War II or the Great Depression, that this is of that magnitude, which will really shape, the generation that we are a part of.
Great thoughts. Rob.
Yeah, so I run a very small organization, maybe 20 people, and so we have to deal with this on our own. But so I can't really say what state governments should do. But I will say this: I think one of the things that this has made clear to virtually all organizations is the idea that we could work at home. There was a lot more to that than we thought. It's easier than we thought it would be. People are doing better than we thought they would do. And when you look at some of the major technology or IT companies, they really made a commitment to do this for a long period of time. Some technology companies said they're not going back to work for months and months and months, even if society opens up, because they don't have to. We're in a situation like that. We're blessed. We're a think tank. We think, we have to meet with policymakers, or not have to, we want to. But still, I think one of the things that this is going to, I think, drive forward going forward is we're going to need less office space for state governments. We're going to be able to do a lot more of this at home, and maybe move to some kind of quasi-hoteling model where maybe a third of the people don't have to come in every day, or on average, you have a third fewer people, and you can maybe get rid of some office space and free up costs that way. So I think I agree with Calvin. I think this is a structural change. This isn't just a temporary. Some of it will go back to normal, but I think it really has opened up people's eyes that remote is actually pretty effective. Now, 10 years ago, if this happened, I don't think we would have been able to do this, but now we can, and the technology just get better.
Some great points, and I think kind of going back to, I just want to capitalize on something Calvin was talking about. At least I maybe was reading between the lines about the anxiety. There may be some angst of people coming back in, and you have those sensors that are reading temperatures to within some very precise measurements, and so what are the kinds of things we can do to enforce that people are social distancing, that they're wearing the masks, even maybe their Darth Vader mask, or whatever it takes, and because there will be a lot of angst about people coming back into the office. And so are there things that we can do in the office environment to maybe enforce it? I mean, maybe Irvin mentioned the thermometers, or and Rob mentioned, hey, we're going to be more remote anyway, so we won't have the challenges of space that we've maybe had in the past, where people are right on next to each other in this kind of an old traditional work environment. So what does the future look like about enforcement of these kinds of things? Irvin, do you want to?
Yeah. So I always believe that strong leadership is by showing example. And every day here in Ohio at 2:00, we have Wine with the Wine. So it's a phrase of a love phrase for our Governor DeWine at 2:00 for press conferences. We've gone from having 500 on a max day for our Ohio channel and some of the various technologies that we have in place as a max. Now we're hosting anywhere from 250,000 on upwards, just from a viewer perspective. Everybody's tuning in. The one thing that our governor does every conference is he begins it and ends it with donning the mask. Both he, Dr. Acton, and Lieutenant Governor. And I think that's where you set the tone at the very top of the house. He's been on the very leading front end on many of the issues. We shut down our Arnold Classic, which is a world, it brings in over 200 countries together right here in Central Ohio. And that was shut down. That was millions and millions of dollars. It was during the time where, we had one case in the state of Washington, but it was early on. So I think having set the tone at the very top of the house, we as leaders, we need to do that same thing by donning the mask, by encouraging people, if they have work that they can do, work remote until we can get to some kind of a rhythm. We're not necessarily in a huge, stampede mode to get back into the office. We are in a trying to get the economy going, getting that going back. So there's been several strategic groups that have been pulled together with industry experts, et cetera. But in order to kind of enforce it, you've got to be able to embrace it as a leader and push that down. And as folks see you do it, they'll know that it's okay. As I'm out in, grabbing groceries, et cetera, we're probably at about a 50-50 here in Ohio, where some people are wearing them, some people aren't. Our governor came out with a very strong, earlier this week, just this week, that everybody must wear a mask, employees, citizens, and there was a backlash. So our governor recognized right away. He, instead of trying to brush underneath the cover, came out and said, you know what, I feel like that was one executive order that went too far. We're not going to, put it into an executive order and mandate it. However, we're going to highly encourage it. And I'm going to be the example. Many people were saying, well, I don't have anything to make out a mask. There are a number of things that you can do. Take an old t-shirt, take a bandana. I don't have a hair tie because I don't have any hair, but there are a number of things you can do in order to, move the ball forward. So I think as leaders, we have to set that tone.
I think I might have an old Ohio State t-shirt I'd love to cut up. So
whatever it takes. This is for Jim Weaver, who lost the bet with his Penn State folks. He still owes me a picture with him in a t-shirt. So I'm going to don it one more time for you, Jim. I got your text.
Okay. Calvin, other thoughts about enforcement side or anything like that?
I think it's we're going to have to, help shape our culture and our organizations, and we'll do that by trying to be really good communicators of, because at the end of the day, you've got people who are feeling very uncomfortable and are looking to us to try and, let them know that it's going to be okay, and that if they have a particular unique issue, that we're going to try to find a way to help address it, and that we're all on the same team. We have a mission to accomplish as an agency, and it takes all of us doing our part. And I think, and that's really what I believe is going to be driving some of this. We had talked about several items. I think the culture piece, I think you do have to make it okay if someone has a concern about even someone else in the organization. It's okay to, report that in a proper way. If you don't feel like you could go talk to them about it. And then we've got to have the policies and procedures in place. How do we then address it? And I think those are some of the things that will help make our workforce feel more comfortable, beyond just some of the things we've already discussed, making sure that we're maybe reconfiguring space and all, and doing some of those things to make our work environments more conducive to keeping some distance between people. We've even gone as far as to talk about assigning people that here's your break room that you're assigned to, here's your restroom that you're assigned to. So if you were to develop symptoms, at least we've narrowed down, hopefully, the areas of the building that you're in. If we're having a meeting, let's use a product to do that electronically and not actually end up in the same conference rooms when we can do those type of things. So I think that's the culture that we have to set, that we're showing the organization we can still be effective and just do things differently.
Absolutely. Rob, other thoughts? Yes.
Well, I was going to say one other thing that reminded me what Calvin said. Obviously, Google and Apple have come out with a Bluetooth tracking system. And I think, Arvin, to your point, that's an area where state officials could lead by example to say, we're going to use these, we're going to keep them on. I think the way the way they're deployed, you have to opt into that, although that's not our position. We think they should be on, and if you want to opt out, you can opt out. But states could lead and say, we're using these, and we think everybody should use them. And I think that would be an important message, not just a message, but then to Calvin's point, it would help with your own tracking when you see something come development.
Great points. That's Calvin and I were talking about this app that has been out there in the Apple Store and in the Google Play Store about that and also going back in history, like if I now know I'm positive, who have I come in contact with? So great point, Rob. And that should be reassuring for folks as they're coming back into the workplace, knowing, hey, at least there's some other protections, because there will be anxiety, there will be some worry, and so some of the things that were brought out, I think, will put some of that to bed. But certainly there's going to be those that we're going to have to make sure we do this carefully. So, I mean, we kind of talked about remote work, and we talked about this in some other sessions, but do you think that you're going to continue working remotely? And now that we've proven it, it seems like we were admiring it for a long time here at the state of Utah. Our lieutenant governor was talking about it, like a year ago. Hey, this can improve air quality. We can, I think Mike Leahy was talking about the buildings in another session that they don't have to draw on. Rob, you just mentioned that today. And so there's from the demand that employees put on buildings, some of these things come off the table. So what does it look like going forward? Does it look like remote work's going to be here for a while, or what is the new norm maybe as you see it? Maybe Irvin, can I go to you first?
Yeah, I think the cat's out of the bag, and it's going to be hard, trying to hurt the cat and put it back in the bag. We've proven that we can be just as productive, if not more productive. I'm grateful to be in this chair and be leading this team. It is a team effort. We have, gone from collaborating to taking it to the next level. It's all about one team, one goal. So I've had folks, stand up VPN, Mark Smith and his team, going from 5,000 to 10,000 to 20,000 to 40,000, and ultimately realizing that we didn't need as many connections because a lot of our applications and people could do their work, via Office 365 and a number of the web applications. Katrina Flory and her team with regards to our Innovate Ohio platform, Chris Hagberg with Ohio Benefits, and Anupam from a security perspective, and then, last but not least, Jency Smith keeps us all in line, right? So I think for the most part, I'm nestling in into what I have been kicked out of my wife's office and put back down into a man cave, the basement, or the kids' cave is what it used to be. So I've ordered a desk off Amazon. So I'm going to go dual mode. I didn't think that I could do it, but I have done it successfully for the last 2 weeks. And what I find is that, I'm sitting in this chair so much that if I weren't wearing this watch to tell me get up, I think I would still be planted here. So trying to pick a spot in a house and keep that demand of, my personal space and my workspace. But I think it's here to stay.
Calvin?
Yep, well, echo. It is certainly here to stay. I just think about the amount of time that people are capturing from commute times. Atlanta's not the best, depending on where you live, the quickest place to get somewhere with all the traffic. But I think again that our teams have done a great job shifting. I think for some of my group, we had already had some flex work schedules where people could work 4 10-hour days. They could work a couple days from home, but we did expect them to be in the office some. So it's been more of a shift in those areas. And then we had some areas like in our finance area, accounting area, where all of them were used to working in the office every day. So I just think as we have found ways to do some things differently, that it is working quite well. I did want to bring up one of the things that our group's been talking about. We've talked a lot about remote working, so teleworking, but we've also the term of virtual workers, which our view is our definition of that is the teleworker is someone who, if I need to have a meeting at the office, they can drive in and be there. Virtual worker may be in a rural part of the state that's now is a resource for us to try to fill some positions, because we have shown that we don't have to be in a certain geographic area to get something accomplished. So I think that really opens the door a lot wider for us to be able to go after some talent that, even here in the Atlanta area, a number of people that was a great fit for us, and then they looked at their commute from maybe being in Alpharetta somewhere that's an 1.5 to 2 hour commute into the office. That became an issue. So I think we have some new tools to get around some of that. even to the point that I think some of our workers do not even have to live in the state. There's certainly some political angles that to work with that, especially considering the state of the economy right now, but probably more longer term, we can have workers that are working across the nation. So.
Yeah, great point. We're starting to hire folks, beyond a 2-hour commute in the state, and it's really paid a lot of dividends and opened up that recruitment pool, and maybe even revitalized some economies in rural parts of our state that weren't otherwise there. So great point. And maybe Rob, from your perspective too, build on that, but maybe talk about too the perception, the public-private perception, of states now doing this, where maybe the private sector had figured out how to do it, and now that everybody's thrown into this, maybe you could build on that too.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One, we at ITIF, I've had a number of our employees, they start out working at our Washington office, and then for family reasons, in both cases, the spouse moved to out of state. We continued the relationship, and it's been fantastic. But not to hawk any particular technology, but one of the really cool technologies that we have, we visited a company in Silicon Valley a few years ago called Suitable Technologies, and they sell this thing called the Beam, and it's kind of cool because it can't get the virus. It's my guys who are out of state, they can drive this thing around our office and join a physical meeting. And they just control it from their laptop. They can drive down the hall. Hey, I want to go talk to Sally, and I go into Sally's office. I want to talk to Fred. I go into Fred's office. I actually think technologies like that are sort of hybrid. They let you be in a physical place, really, and they're not exactly the same as being there, but they're better than this. And I like this. And don't get me wrong, they're better than this because the Beam actually, when somebody's talking, he'll turn it and face you, and it really is, it's not 100% there. So I think when you combine those technologies, and then obviously everybody moving to the cloud, I mean, we moved all of our files to the cloud about 2 years ago, which I'm glad we did, because now it really doesn't make any difference whether I'm here or at work. So I actually think that because of this is such a big point, it's like, it's going to be like AD and, BC and AD is going to be before COVID and after COVID. And in the AC world we're moving into, it's going to be, oh yeah, we're working at home. Sure, state-owned government employees are working 4 hours away in a small town. I think states will get governors and leaders will get credit for that, because you look at all of your states, or particularly Ohio and Georgia, where you got a lot of people in Columbus, you got a lot of people in Atlanta. You got parts of your state where, boy, it'd be great even if you could employ 10 people in some of these places. That's a good thing to do. I think the politics of this actually will work out. I think they'll work out quite well.
Mike, I thought he was describing an episode of The Big Bang Theory, with Sheldon.
Yes. All right, maybe just one more about the future of remote work. What does it look like for procurement? Is that going to change a lot? Are we going to we're probably buying more laptops than desktops. We're probably maybe even considering reimbursing Wi-Fi or broadband at individuals' homes. Have you toyed with any of those kinds of things? What the future of that looks like? Maybe Irvin, we'll jump to you.
Yeah, I think for the most part, what people are realizing is that not only are you this is an equation, right? You're saving money on gas. We were talking earlier in our pre-huddle. Rob has not filled up his gas tank in a month. You're not paying for parking, so there's a savings that's there. In addition to that, you're saving time on the commute. Oh my gosh, I have to literally physically think about it, slow down. You're not driving the vet, just slow and just get there, as soon as you can. But there's economies of scale, and I think we have to look at the big picture. Working from home, I still think of it as something that one is not entitled to do, but it's a perk. It's a recruitment tool, but I think we need to look at big picture, total balance of saving money on this side, but at the same time trying to make sure that the state remains whole with regards to everybody needs Wi-Fi. We've gone from a household of nobody being here except for the dog during the day, to having 2 college students and 2 full-time working adults, right? So I'm glad I went ahead and went with the upgrade when everybody else thought it was crazy. I'm glad I got that upgrade on our connection, because man, and it's paying big dividends to cover this entire house, as I just implemented a new mesh network for the house. So.
Well, you've done a great job. You're very clear, and it seems like your ISP and your work there at your house is working really well. Nice job, Irvin. So,
Mike, I think to add on to that, I think the budget is also probably going to keep us from, some of these thoughts about stipends and some of those things. The timing is probably not good to try to push some of those new items through. And you made me think of a story here where I just a few days ago talking with one of the agency heads who had called asking about some thoughts on moving something to a cloud environment, because he's got about a dozen locations spread around the state, and he's saying, okay, I know these budget cuts are coming. My team of people are working fine remotely. Why do I have anything other than my headquarters for administration? Why don't I look at getting rid of these other locations? So he was already second step of that, trying to figure out there's a few things that I need to relocate, like my DR site is in one of those. How can I get it into a cloud environment and be ready to move forward, knowing that we've all have some budget tightening that we're going to have to accomplish. So I think there's a lot of things like that, just a few months ago, politically, you probably would not have been able to tackle. And today, when you look at the budget concerns versus also the ability to mitigate some of the health consequences of people being in some of these smaller buildings and all, I think politically that it won't be much of an issue. I think the timing's right to make some of those moves.
Yeah, great point. We've been asked for a 10% scenario, 10% cut scenario to get back to the legislature and we're looking at that same experience that, hey, what can we do if we can cut out some of those expenses by folks needing to come back into the office. So great point. Other thoughts, Rob, before we wrap up this section?
No.
Okay. All right. Certainly, digital government has probably played a role in continuing services to the citizen. And that's been something Utah's been focused on for some time, getting those services out. Our mantra has been always getting out online, not in line. And so that's worked really well for us. And we've certainly seen the dividends pay now for some of this. Now, we haven't been able to figure out all of these things. As a matter of fact, we closed down all but 3 of our DMVs in the state during this pandemic, and those were drive-through only. And it created some challenges. Admittedly, people were driving in, getting in line in their cars at 6 a.m., hoping for a not terrible wait. Unfortunately, it still was. So we haven't captured everybody that can move those for whatever reason. Maybe they're cash only, or they have to do something in person. There's some things that we haven't figured out yet. As a matter of fact, we thought, hey, this is a great pool of individuals to do COVID-19 testing while they're sitting in their car in line. We can just go test a few more folks. And so, it was really unfortunate that everyone had to be in line, but certainly brought in a perspective like, hey, we need to push digital services for our citizens. So maybe you could talk about some of the things that you're doing or have done to help promote digital services for the citizen and see how that looks. And maybe we'll just go through the same order, Irvin through Rob.
Fair enough. So about this time last year, it was my first mid-year, and I was extremely nervous. But there are a few folks that pulled me in, encouraged me, and gave me their personal cell phone numbers. So now that I flash back forward, think about where we are now. We started out with an initiative called Going from Cloud First to Cloud Smart. And I really think that's been the foundational element that has enabled us really to combat COVID-19 very quickly. We have a dedicated team from the center that's focused in on various cloud technologies. So not every agency has to go out and go hire a cloud architect. We have one. We have a dedicated. They're trained. They're versed in all the various skills, et cetera. Then you take that, and on top of that, our innovative platform where in which we are, making a concentrated effort in partnership with Lieutenant Governor to digitize many of the services that we're offering. That's taken off like a skyrocket, where both got to business support and from an IT standpoint, we went in together and met up from a strategy standpoint. We did that over a year ago, and we've been working on that constantly. So the framework has been laid and really allowed us to do the Nike swoosh, and go up really, really quickly to offer those various services. We have a long ways to go, but we have some very heroic goals that we've set for ourselves, and I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about state government being able to play in some of the same places that the private industry has played for years. I think we're capable of doing those same types of providing those same types of technology services to our citizens. So let's get it. OHIF.
That sounds good. Calvin.
Well, what comes to mind, I think, is what I think we will see as a lasting change is the fact that with some of the policy decisions that needed to be made fairly quickly, taking data and turning it into information and quite often having to do some of these things very quickly, I think is really, you've got a group of people now who respect and really appreciate the power of having information that can help make some really life and death decisions across the state. So I think just what that has created will give us, I think, the opportunity to have a much important seat at the table in some of these discussions as they continue to go on. And then just areas where we've embraced doing things differently. I know that, like probably most everyone on the call that's dealt with Department of Labor and some of those areas there, the phones are just ringing off the hook where there's more questions coming in and then the capacity to answer them. So embracing like chatbots. I know within just several days of standing hours up, we've crossed the 1 million mark of questions answered, 500,000 different users being able to ask questions, and doing that in a way to where regardless of which agency you called, you were getting the same answer through the chatbot that was present on the agency's website. So, and people were embracing that because they didn't want to stay on the phone for quite a while waiting for somebody to actually pick up the call and talk with them. And so I think even another area that has probably changed forever is I think a lot of states have been pretty slow to embrace artificial intelligence as some of our solutioning. But again, in the health agencies, which has really been an underpinning of some of the systems that we put in to try to help answer some of the questions and provide stuff more timely to decision makers. I think that's part of our fabric now that we will all embrace. A few other things that come to mind is the developing new channels for citizen engagement. Just because we thought we could only do it one way, we've seen pretty quickly some of the agencies who have resisted doing things differently, that's now really embraced because it's been pushed from senior leadership in the state, and then their agency heads have embraced it and just have found some ways to get around some of the hurdles. So I laugh about that, when we were first looking at how can we limit the number of people coming to the office, and it's like, well, there's set number of people because you have to touch mail to either come into the facility. I'm like, well, that's, it seems like we can figure out some simple ways to accomplish that. So even our organization has really limited just down to less than a handful of people that actually have to go in to process some things. They can push that out digitally to staff. And then over time, the discussions have already started. Why are we even needing to receive these things in paper format? Why can't they be coming digitally? So, I'm sure that will spur a lot of areas that we can improve. And then I think we've also seen that the need for resiliency and making sure that some of the systems are designed in a way that not only are they safe, but they can handle the impact of overnight loads that increase significantly. And then, where we've responded in a digital way to the questions coming at us, we've been able to keep up with that demand versus the traditional call centers and those type of areas is where we've struggled, where the human person without the support of good technology has had a greater difficulty. So I think if we look a year or 2 years down the road, I think we will look at this as an opportunity that has really helped us be more efficient and effective with what we're trying to deliver to citizens.
Great point. Rob, from our think tank, what's perspectives there?
Yeah, so a long time ago, I won an award from GovTech magazine. There was a Digital Doers, Dreamers, and Drivers award, which I was honored to win one year. And I can just tell you, it wasn't for doing or driving. So it was only for dreaming. So in other words, I'll give you sort of the higher level big picture. I don't run an organization. I don't have to deal with all the complexity that you all deal with, but a few thoughts. One is, I think that this is a wake-up call for state governments to be thinking mobile first, or at least mobile equal. We recently did a very quick study where we've done this study over the last couple of years where we measure the performance of websites both at the federal government and the state level on things like page load speed, mobile friendly, security, and disability. And we did this just for unemployment all the 50 state unemployment insurance websites, and then I think the District of Columbia. And what we found was a third of the sites were not mobile friendly. And 20% of Americans, mostly low-income Americans, that's the way they interact with. They don't have the kind of desktop or laptop that we have. So I think that's number one. Is everything going forward has to be thinking mobile as well as desktop. The second thing would be maybe to build on what Calvin was saying. I think we should really start thinking of embracing almost a radical automation strategy. You know, the technology is getting to the point now with AI and robotic process automation and other technologies where we can really think about making many of these processes machine processes. And I know there are political issues in states with unions and all that. I get that. But, you know, states are going to be in a system of austerity for a while with, you know, restricted budgets until at some point the economy will come back and start growing again. But that's a while off. And even then you take a little lag time before the revenues catch up to that. So states really, I think, are poised to do that. The challenge has been, you know, how do you do it? You know, Calvin, you mentioned the DMV. You know, I have to say, I hate going to the DMV. Like, I enjoy going to the dentist more than I enjoy going to the DMV. And not that they're not nice people, they're perfectly pleasant people. It's just the process is so, and I look at it like, if you were to say no one can ever go to the DMV again, it's against the law, could you make it so that every single function that is there could be done remotely? And I think it could be. I mean, Calvin, you mentioned cash. I know, for example, in Mexico, Walmart has this program for a lot of people there don't have credit cards. They can't. So you can go to a Walmart store in Mexico and you can give them money and they'll give you some sort of e-token that you can then use online to pay. You can imagine a partnership in your state with a company like Walmart or Target or CVS. I'm sure a bunch of these companies would be happy to engage in that so that people without a credit card would be able to engage remotely. You think about things like, well, maybe it's a signature issue. Well, we could be thinking about a strategy for digital signature capabilities. So I think what I'm really getting at is I think we should, maybe the way to do that, I'm just thinking out loud, is there a Nacio task force just on DMVs where everybody gets all their best practices. Hey, I did this one that way, I did that one, and then here are all the ones that we're struggling with. And then, you know, the last part of this is I would encourage you to lobby or go to the federal, I know you can't lobby, but encourage your state government shops at 444 North Capitol Street to really go and get Congress to put a little bit of money behind state IT modernization in this next stimulus or whatever there's going to be. It doesn't have to be a lot. It could be simply, and we're going to pick 5 states to do radical DMV automation. And then we all learn from that. What worked in Mississippi is different than Utah or different than Ohio or whatever it might be. So I think at one level it's a tough challenge because I think, as Irvin, you said, that there's a money problem coming up down the road. But at the same time, there's an excitement opportunity. There's a vision opportunity. Hey, we may need to be able, you know, the next time we may be in a situation where we're not going to reopen for 6 months. I mean, heaven forbid. How do we operate that way? So I think at one level we should be thinking, you know, big and bold.
Agreed. That great. I think the investment is well worth it. when you start to see the dividends, especially when you get into a pandemic. Who would have thought? And so actually, I keep having somebody tap me that wants to get in a word, but no, I guess. All right, he's okay. So maybe I could just go. I know we had a lot more that we wanted to talk about. There's just a couple of questions and very limited amount of time. And so maybe one thing, a question that's out there, we're not going to get to all of them, but how are CIOs going to handle collaboration and mentoring of new individuals coming into the workforce when they're now working from home? Do you see that as a challenge going forward? And I know we just have like a couple of minutes. Anyone want to just take that question real quick?
So I think mentoring is critical and key, especially with any workforce. But you got to leverage the tools. Microsoft Teams, has been phenomenal. It's trying to think strategically by trying to call 5 different people every day. And try and make those touch points. I think that has to continue and to be fostered throughout the entire organization. A couple of maybe 4 weeks ago, we were feeling kind of disjointed. So I hosted a virtual lunch hour in which I DJ'd it. Everybody brought their lunch. I was off the clock, but I brought real DJ equipment, and we for 30 minutes, entertained family with kids at home, etc. And it really brought us together in a sense of community. That was at least the feedback. So I think you have to be intentional and authentic at the same time as to how you want to engage or encourage and mentor your workforce.
Great. Calvin, other thoughts?
I think when you asked the question, I thought about my prior life where we had a big group of our workforce. It was our sales force, about 50 people that were really never in the office. And there were certain ways back then that you made sure that you could make them feel a part of the team and be able to mentor them. And then you think about all the newer technologies that we have today that actually makes that much easier, like the system that we're using today and many others. I just think that we're going to find new ways to do things, and that won't be the biggest issue we're dealing with.
Okay. Rob, anything else to add before we jump on? We're going to maybe take one more question before we.
Yeah, and just that, we instituted something now where we have a virtual happy hour every Friday at 4:30, and we did a trivia quiz last week, which I failed miserably. And but one of the things, maybe it's to Irvin's point here as well, I find that actually I have become closer with my team, and partly because we're at home and we sort of see each other in a different environment. I think people are a little more, have their guard down. They're a little more, I don't want to say friends because it is a work relationship, but I do think that's an interesting dynamic that I think I feel much closer as an organization than we did 2 months ago, and I thought we had a great organization. So I think this new way of working actually can bring people together and make teams actually more functional.
Great idea. Actually, Irvin, I want to join your next DJ gig virtually if I can. So
fair enough. Consider I'll give you, I wouldn't even make you say OHIO. You can say,
okay.
You talking, you say, you can even say that. But
yeah, go you, baby.
Yeah.
Can I just add on to some of the fun stuff? Like today with our organization was Crazy Sock Day, so folks were to send in a picture of their crazy socks. Yesterday was whatever your team was, send in your jersey. And then I did not participate in the first one this week was your pajama picture. I figured that was probably too dangerous to have something like that floating around. So.
I'm not going to stand up because then you'll see what I'm wearing from the waist down. So. Maybe I know we kind of have some technical glitches, so maybe we'll just go a couple minutes past the hour if that's all right. Last question, I think, though. And so tell me everyone's thoughts about future procurements. Oftentimes we require vendors to be on site. And because of this new maybe teleworking experience and that kind of thing, do you see maybe procurements changing down the road because, hey, we figured out how to do this? What are your thoughts about the vendors now joining in that mix? Irvin?
I definitely think we have to change our mindset about everything, including vendors. The vendor community has reached out in mass quantity, and it's been overwhelmingly great with a lot of timely solutions. I've seen a lot of what I call vendors graduate to being partners. And I don't think we could do what we do without our partners helping alongside us. So yes, we have to change the way that we think about procurement as we continue to move on forward, especially with the looming budget cuts that many of us are going to be facing. So again, it gets back to that balancing act that I talked about earlier, kind of the give and take. That's something we're going to take into account.
Awesome. Calvin?
Yeah, the partnership with our vendors is, I guess for Georgia and a couple other states in the outsourcing model, we've had people working all over the country that support us. So that's, I don't really view that as being anything different than what we're doing today. It's worked very well for us, and I just think in some of the other areas we can, leverage it a bit more. But when people have projects to complete and, a very detailed project plan, you can easily manage those items to make sure they're getting accomplished, and that you're, if you're paying for outcomes, I do think your procurements do look a little different. Some of the requirements will look quite a bit different. But, at the end of the day, I do want to echo with what Irvin was saying. We couldn't accomplish what we've needed to over the last couple of months without our vendor partners are really rolling up their sleeves and helping us think out of the box and find ways to get things accomplished.
Yeah. Rob, any thoughts about procurement? Okay, and it's a little different, but I couldn't agree more. And those partnerships, especially these times, have paid huge dividends. I mean, to be able to make a phone call and say, hey, I need this weekend, can we do this? And to see that those long-standing relationships have really played out and really paid a lot of dividends, where you're trying to maybe change your SIP volume or your call volume for the state. All of that needs to happen so quickly. And so the vendor community has responded, and our partners there have just really been amazing. And it's interesting, Nacio, last year was the 50th anniversary, and it was the year of partnerships and leveraging those partnerships. And so it's really, I'm seeing those pay dividends today, and I think Irvin's saying the same thing. So again, we've just got about a minute over. So with that, I'll probably have to turn it back to our president. But before I do that, let me just say thank you to everyone. It's been just an invigorating discussion. I learned something every time, and actually me and Todd here, he looks like he still wants to say something. I'm just not sure what he's going to do there. But anyway, we just want to thank you for the information and the feedback. And the virtual experience that we've had, and hopefully sometime in the future we'll do this in person. So with that, thanks to all of you, and turn it back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike and team. What a great way to close our Nacio virtual mid-year. I really appreciated your thoughtful and compassionate responses to the questions. A couple thoughts. It's always fun to hear be challenged by a creative thinker, and Rob, I think, did that for us, both by demonstrating what some of the things he's already doing, but challenging us for the future. And I would encourage all CIOs and our vendor partners to really take that to heart. The comments on paper to electronic really resonated with me. We've had a couple areas where we really forced the issue on that, and it's created unbelievable, many orders of magnitude efficiencies in certain processes. So I think if we did that more, it would be really helpful. And finally, so you're taking some of these staid, tried and true, I have to do it manual, like unemployment insurance, for example, in some cases, and going to modern digital government is really happening quickly and is paying dividends. So thank you again. What a great job. Just in case, I know that you didn't hear me in the beginning. My name's Dennis Goulet, and I'm the Commissioner and Chief Information Officer for the state of New Hampshire and the President of Nacio. Sorry about the technical glitches in the middle, but I think the Nacio team and all of you did a great job of, adapting and pivoting on that and got us back on track. At this point, I encourage you to head over to the Virtual Networking Lounge. You can join in current conversations or start a new thread. That community will remain up through June, so continue to network with colleagues and share ideas. While we miss being together in person, Nacio does provide a number of ways to connect with and learn from one another through the year. If you're not already on a topical committee, we invite you to join. You can find those details on the Nacio website under Get Involved. We are currently planning our annual conference to be held in Minneapolis this October. The health and safety of our members and the team are our first priority. We will be monitoring the situation and federal and state guidelines, and we'll let everyone know of any changes to those plans if needed. For our corporate members on the webcast, if you were unable to join the corporate member exchange yesterday, I encourage you to visit the Nacio website for details about a networking opportunity starting next week called State CIO Roundtable Chats. We know that it's a popular during our regular in-person meetings, and we're trying to simulate that in a virtual manner. Those events will be similar to the speed networking sessions you love so well. Everyone, please check your inbox for a follow-up email from Nacio, which includes an evaluation. We'd like to know what your thoughts are on this format and hear what you're excited to see when we're in person again. I want to put out a special thanks to the Nacio team and the events committee. We planned 2 conferences basically, and when we found we had to cancel the mid-year, the teams did a great job adjusting and adapting and pulling something meaningful together. Great job. Thank you to all of the speakers as well, and all of you for joining. I encourage you to stay well, stay healthy, and hope to see you all soon.